It's such an honor to have you. There's a lot to talk about. I think, like me, you have a huge interest into the history of punk rock and the history of Canadian punk rock. But for people that don't recognize your beautiful glasses, beautiful faces, or your car, who
Yeah,
the
in
hell
my
are you?
car. Yeah, in my dark car. Yeah, sorry about that. The lighting's probably not good. But that's probably better for yeah, for me. I look better in the shadows. Um, what do you want me to introduce myself? So my name is Jason Lamb. I live in Victoria, BC, way over here on the west coast of the country. And I work in radio for a living, actually, at a radio station here called The Zone at 91.3 with my good buddy Dylan. Him and I do the morning show, and I've been into punk rock since I was a teenager, and I did a show for a long time. Um, my regular show is the morning show thing, but then on Friday nights I do a thing called the Punk Show, which is on a little bit of a break right now because this book stuff is taking up all my time. But yeah, and I wrote a book about Nomeansno, my favorite Canadian punk band. That's pretty much that's my story.
It's crazy. It's pretty, I don't talk as usual with fellow people that work in radio. It's so cool. It's such a great media. And I'm lucky to do that too.
Yeah.
Not on a regular base every weeks, but still it's so cool that the passion of music is still shared with people like you and me. And yeah, so I'm curious. Let's get back to when you were a little kids. I'm curious how you start discovering that passion to music.
Well, I mean, I grew up I'm not a musician and my family wasn't musicians, but my stepdad who I grew up with had a really big record collection. You know, it was all classic rock and R&B and stuff like that. So I grew up listening to everything. And the radio too, of course. And then when I got into junior high school, that's when I got exposed to punk rock for the first time. Like I'd already heard, like the Clash and the Ramones and stuff like that, but in around 84 or something, 85, when I was like 13, 14 years old. I remember hearing the Dead Kennedys for the first time, and that really was like where I was first like, wow, this is like cool and scary and different and amazing. And then soon after that, I heard another band from Victoria called the Dayglow Abortions. That the Dayglows, yeah. So um, and then I was like, wow, this is crazy that people can even sing songs about this stuff and say this kind of stuff. And I just kind of went from there and just started to become interested in that type of music and started buying records. And it was a couple more years till I actually got out to a gig, like an all ages gig. And the Dayglows were the first band that I ever saw, first punk band I ever saw. And then the No Means No stuff came pretty much after that. I started hearing about them, and somebody played me a song called Dad and on a Walkman. I remember it, and then saw them shortly after that and was completely blown away, and became my favorite band pretty quickly. And yeah, I mean, I was never a card carrying punk. Like I never had a mohawk or wore spiky leather jackets and patches and stuff, but I hung out with a lot of those people. I was one of those kids that kind of knew everybody in the scene, like whether they were jocks or punks or nerds or whatever. And so but I loved going to see punk shows and I loved listening to it whenever I could.
I
Yeah.
relate to that.
I knew, yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, like the BC scene has such an impact. And I mean, like Vancouver has such great band. I mean, DOA, they paved the road with Black Flag, back in the days for band to tour and everything. But I mean,
Yeah.
you're so close to, Seattle and everything. And I think that both city kind of influence each other. And I'm pretty sure in the 70s it was not seen as two places that music can explode or at something big coming out from that. But it happened, and after that, it went like crazy, and it always like Toronto, like it's really a lot of bands are built around that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Victoria too, being on an island, we're separated from Vancouver, we're separated from Seattle by water, and we're on an island. So back then, of course, there was no internet and there was no cell phones and any of that kind of stuff. So the stuff in Victoria kind of came always a little bit later. Like we were always a couple years behind, which actually was a good thing because it meant that the bands that wanted to start up back then in the early 80s, late 70s even, and then into the early 80s, they were all kind of unique and different because they didn't have um, one particular influence. Like in Vancouver at the time, DOA was the big band in the punk scene in Vancouver, and so a lot of the bands that were starting up down over there kind of sounded like DOA. They kind of had that same kind of style, right? That like DOA hardcore punk style. Victoria wasn't getting that influence right away, so their bands had to be different, and because they didn't really have anything to compare themselves to. Does that make sense? And so, but then a bit later, like when we get into sort of the more mid 80s, um, yeah, the Vancouver, Victoria, Seattle triangle, if you will, was very important. A lot of bands toured that circuit, and so um, and they all got to know each other quite well. I mean, and Nomeansno in particular was a band that was going down to Seattle in the early 80s, or yeah, sort of I should say mid 80s. Um, and influencing a lot of musicians down there that went on to form all these grunge bands later on, like the Soundgarden guys and Pearl Jam and all that. Like they didn't try to sound like No Means No, but they went to those shows and they loved and DOA too, and loved those Vancouver, Victoria bands that were coming down. And that really did influence that later scene that came out and became the big, explosive, crazy Seattle scene. It was kind of neat.
Yeah, I feel the vibe, like you mentioned, like the band were not influenced of what was the thing right now, so it creates something different on his own.
Hmm.
And I'm sure that people, everybody know each other, so they not try to recreate what the other's doing. So they always, and the game is just stepping up, and no means no happen. And
Exactly.
and like it's that band, it's such a crazy thing. It's a huge beast to start knowing. I'm 42. I was not there, so when I start listening to the band, I didn't know where to start. So it's and when you get it and you start to listen more and more, you realize that band have something so unique and so special. And then when you
Hmm.
spoke to a lot of band, they mention it, like, of course we got influenced by Know Me Know, and you understand the impact of the band had, even if I'm pretty sure was not that popular when they were more active.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's very true. Like, and as you probably know now, having dived into it a bit, like No Means No, they intentionally weren't a mainstream popular band. They didn't want to be. They didn't want to be on a major label. They didn't want to get famous. They didn't, they were okay with having money, but they weren't wanting to do it at the cost of their integrity and stuff. So, um, I was really surprised after I started doing the book. Like I knew that they were obviously they had a big fan base around the world. I knew that they had influenced some people, and I knew that I loved them, but it really blew my mind as I started getting into reaching out to people and researching for the book and stuff, just how much influence they had. I mean, some of the big crazy rock stars of the day, and the Foo Fighters guys and the Green Day guys, and um, and even some jazz musicians and authors and comedians, and their reach was quite wide. For those who knew them, people were really into them, and it's pretty crazy. Like I mean, Fugazi and bands like that too, right? Like they were peers, but I didn't realize just how well respected the guys in No Means No were at the time and still are. It's pretty cool.
And the question to ask is, would would the band know at the time? Because there was no internet, so you don't know, like, and you
Yeah,
don't realize that the kid like Dave Grohl listened to, No Means No or Kurt Cobain or whatever,
yeah,
would, take maybe just a spirit of the band and create something else that blow everybody minds. And I always
yeah.
said it's never the one who got the idea who make the money. It's always the one who copy or try to recreate it that make the money with it. So No
That's
Means No. What? that band that have such special things and everybody knows, but they never got in a way the success they deserve. But I'm pretty sure that if you ask them, it's not the same. You don't live it like that. You just go for the next thing. You have fun, and
For
all that
sure.
matters is the connection with people, and they have a strong connection with the fans and the musician.
All they wanted to do was write and play music for their fans and connect with their audience in a real way and not have any pressure to do anything other than what they wanted to do. So if they wanted to put the next album out and have it all be on accordions, they could if they wanted to. They didn't care. They didn't want to have any they didn't want to have to answer to anybody but themselves and maybe their audience, not people in suits and stuff. So they didn't want to play that game. And a lot of the bands around that time did because they wanted fame and fortune, which is totally understandable. That's what a lot of people want. And so, but with that comes a lot of pressures, right? A lot of having to play the game and a lot of having to do what the people who are paying you tell you to do, right? No means no really never had to deal with that. But with that, they had to sacrifice more money and more fame, and that was okay with them at the time. I think that's part of the reason why a lot of these big rock stars now that I keep hearing about love No Means No, because not only are they a fucking great band, but they did the thing that a lot of these guys kind of wish they could have done, if that makes sense. Like Dave Grohl, I'm sure Dave Grohl loves living in his mansion with his 3 swimming pools and his 10 cars or whatever he does. I've heard he's a great guy. Well, I bet you he probably thinks, wow, it would be nice to be able to go to the grocery store and not have to put on a disguise, or have a bodyguard with me or whatever. And so I think there's a lot of a thought for some of that. I don't know if I'm making sense here or not, but I think there's a lot of people in that world who have made it very successfully who kind of think, wow, No Means No did it the real way, the way we all kind of thought you were supposed to do it. If that
Yeah,
does that make
it
sense at all? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, man. Yeah, and I think that it's a choice. When you have that talent and you take risk,
Hmm.
and you learn from those risks and you put it in the band and the experience. I think that I'm sure they have like requests to sign on major label, whatever. I'm sure they saw maybe more money, but they choose to keep the thing for themselves. And I think it's a right choice. And when we look at music, there are always people that discover the band later or anything. And right now with the pandemic, a lot of people have discovered, and with the book, and so they always finish to get what they deserve, but at the end, like, they still got their integrity, and they did it on their own turf and DIY. So people
Yeah.
respect more that because it's more rough. It's like, oh, you choose the hard road. It's not like the road for success. When you hit success, it's done. What else can Dave Grohl can dream of? Selling more records, having more
Yeah.
money. He reach it. So I
Yeah.
don't think it's reaching it, like be there, that it's fun. It's to reach that point. That's the road where it's fun. But I think that if you take the long road, you never reach that point that maybe like you drug star have
Yeah.
and get bored about that.
I think that's totally true. And like, I mean, No Means No retired 7 years ago now, almost 8 years ago now. And I did this book and it's getting a good response. And now John Wright, who's the drummer, has got a new band. Do you know about that? About Dead Bob? And so he's got this group of really amazing musicians and friends together, and they've been doing some shows. He's got big plans to tour all through the world this year. I think he's going to try to get across Canada, probably over to where you are, and down the States a little bit, and down over to Europe. And so he's really enjoying this like second music career, which and the new his new music is really amazing. But of course, he's playing some No Means No songs in concert because that's a lot of people want to see that. But he's not doing it in a cheesy, nostalgia way. He's kind of reinventing them a little bit, and he's really excited about it. So it's like they're kind of getting this recognition now, partly I think because of my book and partly because of what he's doing. And Alternative Tentacles is reissuing their albums on vinyl now and stuff. So it's really nice to be a part of like this. Um, it's not really a resurgence, but it's like a final recognition in a bigger way of these guys, even though they're not even a band anymore. Now it's like, okay, we can all go, hey, it's okay now to give you some praise and to give you some attention and maybe, put a few bucks in your pocket as well, sell some records and some t-shirts and stuff. Um, yeah, I think it's really cool. I know a lot of fans are really happy to see this all coming out at this point, because it felt like it was our own little secret for a long time. Still does kind of, but yeah, if that makes sense too. But yeah, it's really cool. And I mean, the book tells the whole real story of No Means No, and they were always, when they were a thing, very kind of shy and weird and like mysterious and not really very upfront about who they really all were and what they were all about. And so I was really lucky that they said yes to it. And I think they felt it was time. It was okay to like look back a little bit and celebrate what they did because they had a really amazing career and put out some really amazing music. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people like me are really into those story. It's such interesting, and there's so much in it. So
Mhm.
it's cool to to release it. What was the approach? It's kind of being a journalist. You really have to dig and to back yourself to not saying thing that was not totally right. You
Yeah.
cannot be like Wikipedia. You have to be like fucking on it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm sure you did a lot of interview with the band. So finding the good question to ask, how the inspiration and the ethic work behind it
Yeah.
took place.
Excuse me. Well, I guess um I was lucky, or maybe not lucky, but I'd already had, 15 years of experience in radio and had interviewed many, many people over the years for my punk show. So a lot of people in the punk world, and a lot of also just people like I interview, when you're in radio full time, you interview everybody from, ma mayors to city councilors to actors and musicians and uh, everybody, right? So I got pretty good at it, to toot my horn a little bit. Like I became a pretty good at interviewing, and I sort of developed a style where I think I've made people feel pretty comfortable. And so uh I'm not sure if I'm answering your question right, but I started out by talking to the guys, and then I just started reaching out to everybody I could in their world, and that included like their old manager and their old live, touring sound guy, Craig, and and then the bands that they toured with, and then some of their family and friends. And it just went on and on and on. And every time I talked to somebody, it would lead to more and more people. And, you know, over about 2.5 years, I interviewed about 500 people for this book, which was insane. And yeah, and then it was just a matter of putting it all together. And I got to be friends with this guy, Paul Prescott, who doesn't even live here. He lives in Belize. He's retired and lives in Belize, Central America. Um, and he's a really good editor, and he helped me take all of the interviews I had, all of the transcripts and all of the stuff, and kind of start to chop it up and put it into an order that made sense and and stories that were entertaining enough to read. So he gets a huge shout out for that. And then once I got the publishing deal, as Paul continued to help me right until the end. But then when you get a publisher, they have their own editors who, say, okay, well now we need to bring it down even further and tighten it up. It's a whole different. I'd never written a book before. Exactly. Yeah. So it was quite the process. But as far as like just reaching out and getting interviews, that's something I was already doing a lot of, and so I was comfortable doing that. And I was lucky enough to work in radio, so I had access to a production studio where I could record phone calls and Zoom calls professionally and have it sound good and edit it how I needed to. Um and the timing was weird too because they the guys in the band gave me the go ahead to do it right before COVID started. So then COVID hit and everything shut down in the world, which was awful, but it benefited the book in the sense that everybody was home and bored and was willing to talk to me, right? So I was talking to a lot of people who would normally be busy and on the road or in a studio or whatever, and everyone was home and everybody was like, yeah, sure, I've got an hour to talk to you. I got nothing else going on. So a lot of it was timing, a lot of it was experience that I already had, and then just people being willing to be part of it all. And almost nobody really said no. Because once they knew that No Means No guys were okay with it, then everybody was okay with talking to me. Does that make sense? I knew right away I would never do it if the guys wouldn't be into it. It would just never have worked. It would have been awful. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I know you ask a lot if you make sense, but totally, you're,
Yeah. Okay.
you
I
know,
do.
but yeah, it's crazy when you think about it. Like you never know, like the journey you got into when you started up, but when you're into it, it's kind of living the story from every angle and seeing like everybody's perspective, but finding like a common path, that everybody agree with, and build it to something that people will be touched and laugh and
Mhm.
saying, "Man, those guys were crazy." And but yeah, it's a beautiful thing to do, and it should be a huge challenge, and it's great that you did it. And I didn't read it. I can't wait to read it. But I read the story. I saw the interview, and then I'm
Yeah.
sure there was a lot.
Well, I hope you enjoy it when you get a chance to read it. There is a lot in there. Like um I think it's really good. I think it's very entertaining. I think it's really funny in a lot of places, which was important to me because they are funny guys and they always had a sense of humor with everything they did. I tried to stay true to their kind of aesthetic, I guess, or whatever. And I didn't get into a lot of gossipy personal stuff because I didn't think anybody, first of all, really cared. And plus I didn't want to bother those guys about that stuff. It's nobody's business. There's a little bit of stuff in there that's important, but it's just the story of a band that but it was mainly the story of two brothers who wanted to do music together and then formed a band and did it their way all the way through and toured the world, did thousands of shows. They even had a whole do you know who the Hanson brothers are? They're hockey band,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I met John the last time they came, because the last
Okay.
time they came to Quebec was with the Anson brothers,
Yeah.
and it was cool. I went for dinner with them. We drink some Punk Crouch, the beer that
Nice.
that Food the Job did. It was amazing, but I must admit, like we drink the first batch of that
Yeah.
beer, and it was way more smoky and better than the second one. So, but it was great. It was really great to spend time with him and hear all those crazy story, and then see the Ensign Brothers, which is amazing live. And Isaac from the To the Job was the
Yeah.
yeah.
So did you see that show that was at the brewery then? At Isaac's Brewery?
No, I missed
Oh.
that one. I saw the one in Quebec City.
Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah. That's the last Hanson Brothers tour there ever was. And one of the last times they ever played at all together was that tour because when they came back from that, they did like yeah, they did like a couple of Ramones cover shows and then they did their when they got inducted into the Western Canadian Music Hall of Fame, but that was about it. So you saw them right at the end, which is pretty cool. Um
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
Hanson
sad.
amazing. What's
I
that?
wish I could see more.
I know, I know. But that's very cool that you got to have a beer with him, and he still brews. I'm not sure if he doesn't brew the punk route, but he still has some somehow. I think he's still got a couple of kegs that Isaac gives him once in a while. John loves beer still to this day and brews his own really amazing home brew. Whenever I visit him, he's always got really nice beer on tap, which is awesome.
Yeah, yeah. My brother starts to brew around that time, and
Right.
it was fun to talk about because I brew a couple of time with him and friends, and it's such a great experience. And it's tough to do. It's really, you have to be precise, and
Oh yeah.
it's a discipline like music. So it's fun to make. But yeah, it's such a great guy, and yeah, I remember I asked him like, "Will you come back with No Means No?" And he said, who knows? And then when I heard he quit, I'm like, damn it,
Yeah.
another band I will not see. But I hope to see his new project. But they're such like amazing and great, generous human beings. So it makes sense that people got so hooked,
Yeah.
around those band and those guys.
Yeah, that's really important is that everybody knows that they're all really, really nice guys, like just very down to earth, funny, friendly, decent guys. They never put on an air of being anything more than just nice Canadian dudes, you know. You definitely should see Dead Bob when they come through Quebec because I'm guaranteed they'll make it over there. Probably this year, maybe in the summer. I don't know. They're working on all that stuff, but they're really cool. They're really, really good, and the mix of the new stuff and the No Means No stuff is very satisfying.
Can't
Yeah.
wait. Yeah, I will. I will for sure. What's the best way to buy the book? To directly encourage you.
Okay, well, there's lots of ways. You could order it from my publisher, which is pmpress.org. But the best thing that I'm telling everybody to do is support your local bookstore. So whatever bookstore that you like to buy books at that can order in new books, ask them to order a couple copies in, and they should be able to. PM Press, my publisher, can ship anywhere in the world, basically. So any bookstore should be able to get it. If you're really, in the middle of nowhere and you don't have that kind of access, then you can get it through Amazon if you want. I try not to encourage too many people to do that because Amazon's evil, but it is a way to get books, and for some people, it's the only way. Um, Otherwise, if you just Google No Means No book, you'll see all the different places, all the big chains too, like Indigo and Chapters or whatever, all those places are carrying it too. So yeah, or get a hold of me. I sometimes have extra books I can get to you, but if you're in Quebec, it might be a pain. Um,
I'm
but
coming your way, man. I'm gonna
there you
get that
go.
book signed.
You got it, man. No, I could do that for you. Yeah.
But yeah, congratulations again. I will buy a copy for sure right after the interview. I want to read it.
Cool.
But yeah, thank you. And I'm curious. Are you still doing the radio show? As people can listen to you?
Yeah, well, my regular radio show is still going every day, Monday to Friday. The station's called The Zone at 91.3. But we stream online. So if you go to thezone.fm, that's our website. You can click a button there and listen anywhere in the world, either through the website or there's an app and stuff like that. The punk show that I was doing, I did that for about 12 years. I'm gonna bring it back, probably later this year. I just need to get through a lot of this book promo stuff first. I'm just way too busy to put a lot of attention to it, but it'll come back too. And that's always going to be available online once it's up and running. So I would encourage, if you're a No Means No fan and you're listening to this or watching this and you don't already know, there's a really great Facebook group that I didn't start it, but I'm a part of it now, called We're So Right We're Wrong, right being WRIGHT. We're so right we're wrong. And there's like 12,000 people on that group, and it's very active. Every day people are interacting with one another, talking about No Means No, talking about the book, talking about Dead Bob, talking about the reissues, and people, you know, displaying pictures of their collections and stuff like that. It's really fun. If you're a fan, it's a really great place to be. I would highly encourage that. And yeah, and please buy my book. That'd be great.
And will there be a French traduction one day or audio? I would say CD, an
Yeah,
audio book.
well, the audiobook situation, an English audiobook is not even in the works yet because it would be with an oral history the way it is, it would be very hard to do. It would be involve it might happen. If I have the time one day, I could actually put it together so that all the people in the book are saying their thing because I have all that audio still. It is available on ebook, but in English. It's been translated into Polish already. It is being translated into German, and I do believe there's a guy in France who's bought the rights to translate it into France French. I know that's a bit different than Francophone Canadian French.
Yeah,
That's
a
about
lot.
all. Yeah, I know. And so that's about all I know for that. So you could take it on, you know. Yeah.
That's amazing. And we were talking about the Anson brothers.
Mhm.
Biofical are doing Udi, and they have some shirts from Nomeansno and the
Yeah,
Anson brothers, and they're amazing.
but bifocal is amazing, and they're very honest and fair, and they're actually, paying these guys a nice percentage of the t-shirts that they're selling, so that's a good thing. There's a lot of bootleg no means no stuff out there, especially on eBay and that. So I would encourage you to be careful of where you buy that stuff. Obviously, Alternative Tentacles is legit. They're putting out records. They've got some t-shirts and hoodies and stuff as well. Bifocal is totally legit. They're awesome. They're always putting out new fun stuff. And then there's another company in England, I think they're actually based in Germany, called Lo-Fi Merchandise, and they're also a legit place that is, a licensed no means no merch seller. So, yeah, there's places to get that kind of stuff. AT is taking their time with the vinyl releases, but it's happening. It's coming out. And then, of course, Dead Bob's got his, John's got Dead Bob records and t-shirts at the shows, and I think you can often get it through his social media and stuff too. You just gotta kind of look for it. Yeah.
Yeah, the price are fucking decent. It's the fucking post Canada price
Don't even
that
get
are
me
not
started, man.
decent. It's the delivery fees, man, that kill us.
I, I don't, it's unbelievable, man. Like if you want to order something from the States into Canada, the fucking shipping is twice as much as the product most of the time. It's unbelievable. Yeah, Canada Post needs to get its shit together, but that's another story. That's another conversation.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
a lot of problem to deal with right now. So
Yes, we do.
it's
Yeah.
not on the top of the list.
That's true, man.
Jason,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I really
Hey,
had a
thank you.
blast. We'll have to do that again. And congratulations for all those years on radio. And it's not easy to do. And it's a tough job in a way because there's a lot of people that want to do radio. So
Yeah.
congratulations for that. Congratulations with the book, and thank you so much for your time. We're gonna do a huge special in a
Right.
couple of weeks and make the interview available on our YouTube channel.
Okay, that sounds awesome. Thank you so much for having me, buddy. And congrats on you for doing radio too, keeping it alive. It's important. I think it's a really great way of communicating, and I love this world where I can just sit in my car and talk to a guy in Quebec on my computer. What a life. So thanks for having me, buddy. Thanks for having me, Eric. All right.
Thank you so
Okay.
much. Bye bye, Jason.
All right. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Prescription is what you need. No more inhibition.